Thank you for watching the Tank Museum's YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe.
Now this is a Thornycroft. Well, I don't really have to tell you that, it's written on the front. But it's a Thornycroft six-wheeler. It's 6x4 actually. Now that means, for them as don't know, that it has 6 wheels, but only 4 of them, and in this case the 4 at the back, are driven. So the front axle is completely dead from that point of view. It's powered by a 6-cylinder engine, driving to a 4-speed gearbox. And they did do both diesel and petrol versions of this. It's a bit difficult to say which it is. It's under so much mess, but it'll give you an idea anyway. They were more or less the standard type of lorry in the 3-ton class used by the British Army before the war and in the early part of the war. After a while they began to be replaced by 4x4s, but that's another story. So that's what the basic chassis is. It's actually fitted with the body of a bison. Now, Bison was the trade name of Concrete Limited, whose managing director actually was a chap called Matthews, designed these vehicles to try and get as much defensive work as possible out of them. Now, what you're actually looking at is a vehicle that was created to look like a bison. In other words, the front here is made entirely of fiberglass. It's not really armoured at all. But the rear part, which is the pillbox, if you like, is actually original. And the chassis is typical of the sort you would see got out mostly out of a scrap yard or out of a used lorry park and made into a bison for the purposes that they did it. And that's what you've got. So the vehicle is partly artificial, but mostly authentic. And it creates quite a bit of interest here because it looks so different from any other armoured vehicle you're ever likely to see. So that's what it is. Now, as to the way it works, the driver can only get in with the utmost discomfort through the roof. There's no doors, so he has to lower it. There's a canvas cover over there, which you just see the edge of. He peels a bit of that off, drops in through the roof, and he can drive it. But he's completely out of contact with the guys in the back. They're the fighters, the men who are supposed to defend the thing, and they have no way of communicating with him at all, not a speaking tube or anything. So just as well they didn't see action in that case. But they're quite interesting vehicles. They were designed because of the weight of the whole thing. The chassis was meant to carry a 3-ton payload. And by the time you've lumped all this concrete on and everything else, you've made it into quite a hefty vehicle, heavier than 3 tons, definitely. So what they used to do was confine them only to airfields. They were for airfield defence. And there's no hills on airfields. If you ever go and have a look at one, they're usually flat. They've got to be. So without hills, you had a chance of the vehicle moving a little bit. But once it was in action, as it were, it stayed where it was put. It drove to an action point somewhere from the local RAF base and then stopped. And it was a rifle, a fire point from that moment onwards. And it would take about 5 or 6 men in the back with rifles. They got in through, what do you call it, a hatchway underneath, like a trap door. So they had to crawl under the chassis, rise up through this trap door, and then sort themselves out in this pillbox at the back with their rifles. And the idea was they were going to hold off the Germans who were supposed to be landing there, either as parachutists or perhaps as glider troops. And they were going to hold them off and wipe them out before they had a chance to invade the country. Now, who knows? There's just that the German soldiers were not only tough, but extremely well trained. And a bunch of Home Guard guys with rifles in a pillbox seems to me to be unfair odds. But So in other words, the vehicle is very little more than a death trap for anyone inside it. But that's how they were designed. It would drive out onto the airfield to a point that it wanted to stop at, and then it would set up a fire position from there, from the pillbox at the back. And they would deal with invading troops. So how they deal with them, or whether they deal with them effectively, is a moot point. But that's what it is, and that's why it's called a Bison, is because that was the trade name of the firm that manufactured the concrete on there, and that's it.
We have a fantastic selection of books, models, clothes and other gifts on the Tank Museum online shop. When you buy from our online shop, you are supporting the Tank Museum charity, and that means we can carry on caring for our collection and producing this content. If you have supported us already, thank you very much, subscribe and do keep watching.